Right, hello and welcome everybody to the latest episode in our election campaign trail. This episode we are calling Manifesto Pick and Mix. And although we don't have the SNP manifesto yet, but we do have all the other independents parties. We've had a look at all their manifestos and we've picked out the bits we like. We've also got a guest who's going to help us go through them. We've got some film clips as well. So we'll introduce our guest.
And you've done your own manifesto, haven't you? We've got a McGregor manifesto.
We do, and you know, when you hear it, you're going to want to vote for me.
Well, I know absolutely that true. People, that is completely true. I mean, I saw it just for the first time yesterday, and I immediately said to Fiona, "I'm voting McGregor."
Let's get our guest on first, and then we'll have a look at the pick and mix of manifestos. Welcome, Marion.
Hello. Are you sure you want to join this madness?
I can't think of anything I'd rather do on a Friday afternoon than this. This is the place to be.
Fabulous.
That's good, because we'll be very upset if you leave before it's all finished, you know, the way that some politicians do.
We are going to have a look at the Independence Party's manifestos. But first, you might not have heard of this party. This is the Perspex Party.
And now, a party political broadcast on behalf of the Perspex Party. Here's our manifesto in full. See through every move we make. Nothing we'll do will be opaque. Levelling playing fields anew. Honest people working for you. What we promise is what you'll get. True recognition for all your sweat. No more curtsying to the elite, rendering Westminster obsolete. Taking true pride in our great land, upon our own feet we shall stand. Let me make this perfectly clear, our country first, without any fear. There can be no hiding place for politics that bring disgrace. Thus, something not to be ignored, all decisions will be above board. Unless, of course, you'd like to stay under the thumb in every which way.
There was quite a few things in there I liked, so let's see how it compares with some of the others.
The big vision that we sometimes feel we lack, I think Angus had it in a poem.
Yeah.
So that was the Perspex Party.
And that was by far the easiest manifesto to find, I have to say. But what we have done is we've done a collection of what we could find of the other manifestos. Pick and Mix manifesto. And the first one in our Pick and Mix is the ISP. Now, you would think you could just go online and Google party manifestos and up where they would come, but they don't. So the only thing I could find on the ISP was a couple of tweets. This is the bits of one of those tweets that I thought, I could live with. So abstentionism from Westminster, anti-Freeports, and putting independence first.
So ISP, there's just Colette Walker standing, isn't there?
That's, as far as I know, just Colette.
Well, you've got to, give her due, actually. Brave woman.
Small party, got to start somewhere.
To be fair, I mean, they have put up candidates in different elections. It's not the first time they've put candidates up, but to go for a first past the post voting deserves a bit of respect, if nothing else.
Yeah. And it's experience, I suppose, of going through the process. So, but I think perhaps a bit more on the manifesto side definitely would be helpful.
Yeah.
Next one, Scottish Greens. Now, quite a lot on here that I did like, but again, you click Greens manifesto, nothing comes up that says, here's our manifesto. So what I've done is I've put jigsaws together, like pieces of tweets, bits of clips here and there, and things they've said on debates. These are all the bits I like.
Well, I like them. I certainly like them. Reading down through them quite quickly, I certainly like those. Have we got any clips from the Green Party?
We do. The first one, you see there, no new oil and gas drilling. That's one where perhaps they depart a little from some of the other parties, but there's they put out a short video, which I think is extremely good.
I have to say, I haven't seen the manifesto for the Greens.
well, join the club.
Yeah, I would have thought that it would have been messaged to members, but I haven't seen it, and I just assumed, maybe wrongly, that it hadn't actually been published. But
that could be
you
might be right. Yeah, it could be right.
Well, in that case, this is our guess of what we think is in it that we like. So, what's your reaction to that, Marion?
I thought the message was pretty crystal clear. Just in my head, you're thinking, well, yeah, the oil and gas companies in the northeast are looking at a sinking reserve of oil and gas, and the people can pull out. People have pulled out, and their jobs there are jobs in oil, gas, and other parts of the world that those people will escape to if they're not engaged by the Scottish Government and by their employers into retraining and stuff like that, into renewables. And what I would think needs to be done is an overt statement by the Scottish Government saying that the oil and gas companies will be held to account if they don't make that just transition happen for their employees.
It would be good, but two things. First of all, I think, well, what could the Scottish Government actually do? I mean, as a an aspiration, I'm completely with you. I mean, make those oil companies responsible. They've taken a hell of a lot of profit out of the North Sea over the years, but I'm not clear about what actually could be done. And then the second thing, but it joins on from that, is it's energy. It's not it's reserved. The UK government would have to be the ones who are doing it, and I'm not sure that even the UK government can do that much when it's companies.
Is that going to be in the Greens manifesto, do you think? And if so,
I don't know that it is. Is this just me being... Today, I feel very idealistic. I woke up feeling very idealistic.
If you want to do a Robertson's manifesto, we can stick it on the end. Carrying on looking through the Greens ones, I thought there was an interesting one, this idea of banning coal, oil and gas companies from advertising, but almost ties in a bit about what you were saying. This one I like, putting the UK government under immediate, sustained and unrelenting pressure to devolve power to hold constitutional referendums. I thought it was quite interesting that they are highlighting that after the pasting that Lorna gets every time because she once said something about independence not being a red line. She put it very well, I thought, on the debate.
Now, we can set out a vision for Scotland that is fantastic. We have huge resources in Scotland. Wind energy, other renewable energy. I used to work in offshore renewables myself, so I can tell you, when we get those supply chains going, the turbine I built was built with steel from Liberty Steel in Motherwell. It was assembled in the Port of Dundee and is now run and operated in Orkney. We need to scale up those supply chains and create a brilliant future for the people in Scotland. Now, I think we can do that better as an independent Scotland. And the question is, you said it yourself, it's for the people of Scotland to decide. So will you respect our democratic mandate and allow us a referendum on independence? Will you revoke the Internal Market Act that overrules devolution? And will you respect the Sewell Convention
answer the question.
and not pass laws against our will?
Yes. Good for Laura. She got it. She was on,
You spoke for
on
so many
fire
people.
there.
Good to see that really up front.
Yeah. And then drug decriminalisation is common to a few of them. Taxing the super wealthy, though, this is something that we think only appears in the Greens manifesto.
The idea that he tries to project that we're all in this together is simply not true. Working people have borne the brunt of cuts because the Tories, their austerity policies, mean that they have been cutting taxes for the wealthiest and trying to balance the books by cutting public services and the money we need in Scotland, that capital money we need to build better roads, railroads, and hospitals. It is disingenuous of Douglas Ross to pretend that times are hard. Times are not hard for the super wealthy. They've made out like bandits since COVID. Their wealth has doubled and tripled. What the Scottish Greens would do is make sure that those super wealthy pay their fair share. We propose a tax on the super wealthy or have more than assets than £3.4 million, which would raise billions and billions of pounds for the Treasury, which we could invest in those building schools and hospitals and, of course, in that green transition.
She's very good, yeah, definitely. Go on. I must admit, I heard those figures and thought, well, if it starts at 3.4 million, which is a very particular number, there'll obviously be some reason for it, and it will create billions and billions. So that strikes me that that must be a calculation for the UK as a whole.
That's a really good point, actually, because a number of the clips that the Greens have put out, they are talking about UK level. I suppose it's a UK election to Westminster, but they're making an argument to a UK-wide audience, which jarred a little bit with me. But
well, we've said that more than once in these election podcasts we're doing, haven't we? You hear someone talking, and I'm thinking, yeah, but that's devolved. That's to do with Holyrood. It's not to do with. It's completely fair to bring up what what Scottish government has or hasn't been doing. I don't mean that's not should be kept out of it. But then it gets very difficult to follow the argument when it's a UK-wide election.
Alba is the next one we looked at. Now, again, they don't have something that's called Here is our manifesto. What they have is a website that's got policies on it. I'm assuming that is effectively their manifesto, but quite a few of those policies can only happen if we're independent. So again, in the context of a Westminster UK election.
Oh, but it is useful. I mean, it's useful for us, isn't it? I mean, everyone in Scotland knows what the background to that is, and no one will be voting for them in England. So, fair enough. But it's a little bit different with the Greens because there's the English and Welsh Green Party, and
again, they put out what I thought was a very well presented film. There were two particular parts I thought were really good. One is something that we've all spoken about, which is where is our cut of all this use of our resources? Where is Scotland's cut?
I know where it is. It's in the Treasury.
Oh, yes, and I think you could be right there.
Profits swallowed up by international capital, the revenue taken by Westminster, leaving ordinary Scots behind to pay the bills.
Our country is being governed for them, not for us.
And these aren't problems with simple solutions. They require real change.
And it's time to send a message. It's time to say that we have had enough of this system that isn't working for us. That we will not pause the aspirations of the nation for self-entitled politicians at Westminster who don't care about us, who don't live here, who don't send their children to our schools, who cannot possibly represent our interests. It's time to make a stand about the nation we were, the nation we are, and the nation we will be.
We need a party with a plan. And Alba is the party with a plan. To use the ballot box so that each election is an opportunity for the people of Scotland to choose their own future.
It's good, that, isn't it? I mean, I thought that was quite. This is kind of like the language. It's quite evocative and
there was nothing there that I would disagree with in what they were saying in terms of.
Well, not in terms of what they're saying. I mean, I don't think there's anything there that I disagree with in terms of if those are their policies, really.
Well, again, these are the ones that I like of the ones I could find. So it's not here in the manifesto. But it's interesting that they've got UBI as well. The Greens had that And this public energy company, and although we know there are issues with that, we've done a whole Maybe's Eye episode about it. A minimum 20% public share in all offshore wind energy projects run by public energy company. That is way beyond anything that GB Energy is promoting, which is just going to be a privately owned investment vehicle for the private sector.
Yes, indeed. Having a public energy company that owns it, as we've said in other podcasts, Scottish Government isn't allowed to own energy production. However, I suppose it could happen. We've talked again, haven't we? Local authorities are allowed to do that, so it could kind of be shunted sideways. And
on free ports, is there not something being talked about just now about how to extract us from our free port commitments so that it wouldn't preclude us rejoining the EU?
Free ports that do exist in Europe, but they're publicly owned, whereas ours are privately corporation owned.
Could they be bought out by the public purse?
Well, I suppose it's always possible, that kind of thing, or then it becomes not very likely if it takes a huge amount of money. But I do think there's a lot to be said. I mean, I would want all our independence parties to do this now, to be saying, after we're independent, we will be supporting returning those free ports to the taking them over as public companies. I'd like them to be saying that about land reform, and saying, up front, we'll be looking to take land back into public ownership or splitting up big estates. So we're telling you now.
Oh yeah.
I just think we should just be, on the front foot with that.
I think you're right, Marlene, definitely. Transparent, upfront. I think it's only going to build momentum if we start talking positively and radically about the way that we want to run our country. I think these are the kinds of things that we're dying to hear about. It's like an open goal for some of these parties that are pro-independence.
Also, it means we're perhaps less likely to get sued by various companies if we said, well, we told you up front if we were independent, it was going to be nationalised. Let's have a look at the another section from that Alpa film.
Getting control of Scotland's resources so we can use them to benefit the people of Scotland.
This is Grangemouth Refinery, a symbol of this campaign and the refinery that Alba are battling to save. It symbolises Scotland because after half a century of oil and gas in massive quantities, we've become the only country with such a bounty to get relatively poorer. And what's going to happen to Scotland's renewables? Unless we control that resource with a public share in every field, a community share at every landfall point, then we'll have the same story as oil and gas. The Westminster government will get the riches, and the benefits will bypass the people of Scotland again. So Alba stand for Scottish control of Scottish resources, so we cease to become the land of fuel poverty amid energy plenty. We stand for a future where the destiny of our country is decided by the people who live here.
This is one that I thought Marlene can maybe explain this to us, because when I was looking at these the other day, I was going, well, I agree with we don't want new oil and gas. And I thought, but I kind of agree with we want a refinery. And I thought, well, what do we want a refinery for if we're not drilling new oil and gas? Now, Marlene, class SWAT, as she's just declared herself to be, explain it to us.
When you said that, I knew you were thinking about, well, if we're moving to renewables and, why the need for a big refinery. But I mean, everyone all over the world needs to have the plant to make the building blocks for pharmaceuticals. So Grangemouth, I don't know if it's still working, but it certainly had, there's a big ethylene plant there. So ethylene is one of the building blocks for loads and loads of more complicated chemical molecules, and it ends up being part of pharmaceutical industry. There's other things, plastics. We can say we don't want those things, and we do want to move away from them, but in the meantime there's going to be a transition. So if you got Grangemouth as a centre for that for Scotland, it'll be full of inventive, clever chemists who'll come up with new ways of creating those building blocks that then hopefully then you don't need to depend on oil, and eventually that will have to be the case. I mean, there are ways of doing it, but at the moment it takes a lot of energy to do it. But maybe that doesn't matter if you've got a large supply of renewable energy on your doorstep.
Thank you. That was good. I mean, I'm actually going to go to there's a hustings in Alloa on Tuesday. And of course, Alloa is the constituency that Grangemouth is in, and it's been contested by SNP, also Kenny McGaskill from Alapa, and Eva Comrie as an independent. So we will maybe do a special around that. But the last one I thought was quite interesting as well, and this doesn't appear in anybody else's, recognising the Gaelic Act, and that was around the sort of promotion of the languages, our cultural heritage, which again, don't disagree with that at all. Freely owned public transport in there too, which is on my list. So this is SSP. Now, I have to say, of all the parties, theirs was the one that you could Google, where's your manifesto? And there it is. And it's line by line. Here's what's in our manifesto. And there's links for more information under each of them. So by far the best presentation. I don't understand why these guys don't get more votes. I mean, what they say is, I don't disagree with anything they say. And they've got by far the best way of putting it across. A lot of what I would call, in fact, we described it in our last episode as real proper socialism. Ending poverty pay and ending the discrimination against younger workers so that the minimum wage applies to them all, ending 0 hours contracts, so you're guaranteed minimum 16 hours, fighting fuel poverty, an emergency program to retrofit homes and public buildings, creating a national energy company. There's another one wanting a national energy company for people, not profit, and a democratic public ownership of energy, free public transport, windfall tax on pandemic profiteers. That's an interesting one. And repealing anti-trade union laws. 4 days a week on 5 days pay, universal basic income. And again, the Greens had UBI, ban fire and rehire on worse conditions, 100,000 new council homes. None of the others have mentioned homes that I could see. Democratic public ownership of landed estates, corporate farms, increase local food production. That's an interesting one. Community-run supermarkets to end food bank dependence, national care service free at the point of use, address the mental health crisis, decriminalise drugs. I think Alba had that one as well. Withdraw from NATO and remove nuclear weapons. So a very, very comprehensive list of very aspirational stuff there. The one bit that perhaps isn't is, how much is it all going to cost?
Borrowing.
It's always easy to come up with the aspirational ideas when fine, you don't have to, you're never going to be in a position of costing them, which is not a reason for, not doing it, actually. I mean, I read those ones, and I mean, some of these things, I almost think, if they were made a bit less particular, a bit more general, actually would be things that you'd want to put into a constitution. Like those ones about, a universal basic income could easily be part of a constitutional as an aspiration. Things about how you treat the working population in terms of, trade union laws and decent pay, that can also be part of it. So I read that and the others, and I felt quite pleased with Scotland, actually.
This is Richie Benton from the Scottish Socialist Party. I'm proud of the fact that we've got candidates standing in Rutherglen and Glasgow East as socialist MPs who will remain on the wage of a worker and reject corruption and careerism, which infests politics. This general election sees two men fighting to become the next Tory Prime Minister. We don't want to leave people with the choices of different colours of Toryism. We want socialist change. We want, for example, a £15 an hour minimum wage to end the crime where 1.3 million people in Scotland literally cannot afford to live. We want public ownership of energy and free public transport in order to combat the fact that climate change means May was the hottest May in history. So we're a party that stand up for the working class and for socialism, not like all the parties of the rich who stand up for big business. Vote Scottish Socialist Party for socialist change and an end to different choices of Toryism.
So there you go. So why should we have to choose between two colours of Tory? What a great line.
It's great. It's really great line, that, isn't it? Yeah, I like that one. Yeah, as I was taking on board a bit more about what's in those slides that you've come up with, I mean, I ended up thinking, well, there's 4 parties: Alba, Greens, ISP, Scottish Socialists, and they're all progressive, left-leaning in Scotland, for Scotland. And the SNP isn't, we haven't even got as far as SNP, and they're also progressive and left-leaning. I just felt, wow, that's just fantastic, isn't it? And I mean, once I also thought, well, once we are independent, I'm going to be spoilt for choice about who to vote for, which I never have been in the past. It's always been, Labour when I voted Labour, and SNP while I've been voting SNP. And I thought, well, it's just great. It just says such a lot about the kind of country that we are, but we're not free to really express and develop.
A bit of an outlier. I don't think there are many other European countries quite made up in the same way as we are, and I think we ought to be proud of that.
Right.
We are unashamedly what we are, and we've come from this position of left of centre for a very long time, and we oughtn't to hide it. We should really make it work for us as a people.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I suppose, just to be fair, sort of walking back a bit here, because it is the Scottish Conservative Party, and they do get quarter or a bit more of votes cast. So, it's not like it's the whole, what I said, it's not like what I said is the whole story, but it's about 3/4 or 2/3 of the story.
But if they were an actual Scottish Tory party, I think that would be legitimate because they're a branch office of the UK party. I mean, the one thing you said there, you'll be spoilt for choice when we're independent. You won't have to be, because we'll have proportional representation, I would imagine. So actually, I could imagine that would be quite a rainbow parliament. Given those choices, they might all get a space, which would be fabulous.
Sure. Yeah.
Do you want to see McGregor's manifesto now?
Oh, yes.
I hope it mentions the climate and nature emergencies, McGregor's manifesto, because I think bar the Greens and a little bit of mention from Scottish Socialist Party, it's not really high up there. So fingers crossed.
McGregor's manifesto.
Oh, there she blows.
I would like public energy company, but also public house building company and public transport companies. Scottish investment or support should be in return for a percentage stake in the business. Replace council tax with Graham McCormack's annual ground rent. Break up the big councils, have more local democracy. Take a public works approach to district heating installation in the same way as we would if we were rolling out a broadband update. Introduce the bottle and can recycling scheme. Now, this is a bit of a little thing, but I thought I'm annoyed that we gave up on that so quickly, because if you'd taken away the deposit return bit, which the Internal Market Act was complaining about, we could still have had a recycling scheme with all the infrastructure in place. Have some kind of local first, and if you've got something that could be locally sourced, but you bring it from somewhere else, put a whopping great carbon tax on it, because if we're shipping things across the world that we could make ourselves, it makes no sense. And then no second homes owned by people who don't normally live in Scotland, and have a minimum housing stock in each community so that key workers have got somewhere to live. So I haven't actually mentioned the climate.
Indirectly, you have sort of...
So there you go. That is our smorgasbord.
Yes, well, McGregor.
Pick and mix manifesto.
McGregor forever. Is that not the clan motto? The clan motto, McGregor forever.
Royalist by race, I think it is which is equally modest. McGregor despite them.
McGregor despite them. That's it. Yeah.
You need to give us a rendition of that, Fiona. I don't know this.
I can do
song. I'm so...
I've got a recording somewhere of Kenneth McKellar singing it. I'll put it on as the end.
Great.
I did have to start to look through the Tory one, and I just wilted after a bit, and it was full of huge pages that was just a Union Jack, and then there was a plan, we'll do this. And I mean, I presume that what goes through my head when I saw that is the same as what a lot of people must be thinking, which was, why haven't you already bloody done this then, And anyway, I gave up with it.
Is there anything Scottish about this manifesto? No?
Not that I saw. I mean, it's a long, it's I don't know, 80 pages or something, but there isn't anything specific. It's just a plan for working, a plan for NHS.
In a way, it doesn't really matter what's in it, because they're toast, aren't they? They're not going to, they haven't got hope in hell. But have we seen a reform manifesto?
I'll tell you one thing, though, I noticed this morning, because on our last election podcast, Fiona, I was mentioning that possibility of what was being referred to as a crossover point. where Reform might get more votes. I mean, they're never going to get more seats, but they might get more votes than. Well, this morning there was a YouGov poll came out.
That's right.
And Tories were something like 17 or 18%, and Reform was something like 18, 19%. So they had actually crossed over. And of course, the Tory spokespeople come on and go, it was just one. These polls come out every day. It's just one poll, which is completely true. I mean, it might be a complete outlier. On the other hand, if there is going to be a crossover, that is what we'll be seeing. We'll be seeing more of that. And it's remarkable.
And momentum is a very powerful thing. Once the big roller starts rolling.
Yeah, but of course, needless to say, Mr. Farage has jumped on that with his usual, eye for an opportunity, and has been saying on the media rounds this morning, he's the main opposition leader now, and he's demanding a debate with Keir Starmer, just between him and Keir Starmer.
Oh my God!
I thought, oh God.
In the debates he's been in so far, and I've only seen little clips of them, he's been rubbish. He hasn't come across with any presence at all.
Stephen Flynn made mincemeat out of him, and he just was left there with his jaw slack.
Yes.
Stephen Flynn's been magnificent in these. He really.
Yeah, he is. Stephen Flynn and Kate Forbes are doing a really good job, and John Swinney does a bit of a different kind of job. I'm not sure myself that it's quite what's needed. But anyway, we'll see. Still another, so day 22, 3 weeks in. That means there's another 3 weeks of it. I mean, a bit of me goes, could we not just vote now?
Do an online poll.
It's just an online poll. It's just too much to carry on doing this. And can we not just kind of do it now? Because we all know what we're going to vote, don't we? And then I thought, well, no, that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah. As long as people do vote, and you've told them many times, just to make sure that they've got all their ID and stuff like that. So,
where does that leave us then? Are you feeling more like optimistic or more of a momentum kind of happening than, say, if you look back to last week, when however you were feeling then? How about yourself, Marion?
I started at a very low point. When I first heard, and I mentioned this to you, Fiona, my heart just sank. And I think it was because I thought small parties will really struggle finding the funding and maybe the bodies, the energy to get out there to campaign. And then the fact that the Butte House Agreement was dismantled. I feel that from what I've seen and heard and listening to other pundits and commentators, that slowly but surely the SNP are getting their act together in messaging and communication, which I think is vitally important. And they're wheeling out Kate Forbes. The clips I've seen so far, she's performing the way that we know Kate Forbes performs, which is, I'm going to talk through you if you're going to talk through me, Fiona Bruce. And the Greens, I'm certain that they're doing as much as they possibly can with the small means at their disposal.
Yeah. So that sounds like you've gone from maybe a 2 out of 10 to what?
Maybe 5 or a 6.
Oh, wow.
But I think, maybe you've shared the same view as me, that this is so dispiriting to see the state of our politics in the decrepitude and the corruptness that it is. I'm talking about the UK sort of generally, but not in Scotland. I think that we have such a big heart in this country. Surely to God we've got the sense and the intellect to be able to see through the lies and deceit of Labour. That there's a better way, and we ought to be just expressing our voting preferences in the way that we can, because we have more choice here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Fiona, what about yourself? Marks out of 10 from last week up to this week?
I'm going to say 6.5. And I'm getting it the extra half point because of that point you made, Marlene, about looking across these manifestos of parties that two of them won't even share a platform together, and there's a huge common area that we could all get behind in that. We haven't seen the SNP one yet, but I'm pretty sure there'll be an awful lot of common ground there as well. And it just makes me think that maybe there's more that unites us than divides us, if that's not a party slogan.
Yeah. I don't know if I probably was down to about 2 last week. When it started, I was so pissed off at Sunak for calling this election. In my mind, it was going to be September. It's too soon. I mean, it's going to catch people on the hoof, but I do feel a bit more optimistic. I sort of feel there's a bit more of solid campaigning going on, for the kind of ideas that I'd like to see happening. So yeah, probably up myself up to a six, maybe 6.5. And I saw today the most recent poll again, SNP and Labour neck and neck, Scotland at 36%. That's maybe a bit of evidence for what you were saying yourself, Marion, that the SNP have got themselves, sorted out a bit and getting a bit of momentum with some good people.
Okay, well, just say thank you very much to Marion for joining us and giving us your thoughts. And that was our roundup of the independence parties that aren't the SNP. We'll have a look at the SNP and the Labour Party manifesto in a future show.
That will be Manifesto Pick and Mix 2.
Yes.
Great. Okay then.
Bye.
Bye.
And gather, 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 while there's leaves in the forest and foam on the river, McGregor and his pipe